This video is for educational use only. Our group is allowing our instructor, Mr. Roldan Ardines, to use this as an educational material.
Good day, sir. This is Decadent Adelia Ramon, the philosophical foundation of Hinduism. Hinduism is the world's oldest religion according to many scholars, with roots and customs dating back more than 4,000 years today, with about 900 million followers. Hinduism is the third largest religion behind Christianity and Islam. Roughly 95% of the world's Hindus live in India. Because the religion has no specific founder, it's difficult to trace its origin and history. Hinduism is unique in that it's not a single religion but a compilation of many traditions and philosophies. Hinduism believes some basic Hindu concepts include Hinduism embraces many religious ideas. For this reason, it's sometimes referred to as a way of life or a family of religions, as opposed to a single organized religion. Most forms of Hinduism are henotheistic, which means they worship a single deity known as Brahman, but still recognize other gods and goddesses. Followers believe there are multiple paths to reaching their God. Hindus believe in the doctrines of samsara, the continuous cycle of life, death, and reincarnation, and karma, the universal law of cause and effect. One of the key thoughts of Hinduism is Atman, or the belief in soul. This philosophy holds that living creatures have a soul, and they are all part of the Supreme Soul. The goal is to achieve moksha, or salvation, which ends the cycle of rebirths to become part of the Absolute Soul. One fundamental principle of the religion is the idea that people's action and thought directly determine their current life and future lives. Food is an important part of life for Hindus. Most don't eat beef or pork, and many are vegetarians. Hindu caste system. The caste system is a social hierarchy in India that divides Hindus based on their karma and dharma. Many scholars believe the system dates back more than 3,000 years. The four main castes in order of prominence include Brahmin, an intellectual and spiritual leaders. Second is Kshatriyas, the protectors and republic servants of society. Third is Vaisyas, the skillful producers. And last, which is fourth, Sudras, the unskilled laborers. So the origin of Hinduism, most scholars believe Hinduism starts somewhere between 2300 BC and 1500 BC in the Indus Valley, near modern days Pakistan, but many Hindus argue that their faith is timeless and has always existed. Unlike other religions, Hinduism has no one founder, but it is instead a fusion of various beliefs around 1500 BC. The Indo-Aryan people migrate to Indus Valley, and their language and culture blended with that of the indigenous people living in the region. There is some debate over who influenced who more during this time. The period when the Vedas were composed became known as the Vedic period. The last form, about 1500 BC to 500 BC, rituals such as sacrifices and chanting were common in the Vedic period. The epic, Puranic, and classical periods took place between 500 BC and 500 AD. Hindus began to emphasize the worship of deities, especially Venus, Shiva, and Devi. The concept of dharma was introduced in new texts, and other faiths, such as Buddhism and Jainism, spread rapidly. Medieval and modern Hindu history. The medieval period of Hinduism lasted from about 500 to 1500 AD. New texts emerged, and poet saints recorded their spiritual sentiments during this time. In 7th century, Muslim Arabs began invading areas in India. During parts of the Muslim period, which lasted from about 1200 to 1757, Islamic rulers prevented Hindus from worshipping their deities, and some temples were destroyed.
Buddhism is one of the world's major religions. It originated in India in 563 to 483 BCE with Siddhartha Gautama, and over the next millennia it spread across Asia and the rest of the world. Buddhists believe that human life is a cycle of suffering and rebirth, but that if one achieves a state of enlightenment, nirvana, it is possible to escape this cycle forever. Siddhartha Gautama was the first person to reach this state of enlightenment and was and is still today known as the Buddha. Buddhists do not believe in any kind of deity or God, although there are supernatural figures who can help or hinder people on the path towards enlightenment. Siddhartha Gautama was an Indian prince in the 5th century BCE who, upon seeing people poor and dying, realized that human life is suffering. He renounced his wealth and spent time as a poor beggar, meditating and traveling, but ultimately remaining unsatisfied, settling on something called the middle way. This idea meant that neither extreme asceticism or extreme wealth were the path of enlightenment, but rather a way of life between the two extremes, eventually in a state of deep meditation. He achieved enlightenment or nirvana underneath the Bodhi tree, the tree of awakening. The Muhabadi temple in Bihar, India, the site of his enlightenment, is now a major Buddhist pilgrimage site. The Buddha taught about 4 noble truths. The first truth is called suffering or dukkha, which teaches that everyone in life is suffering in some way. The second truth is origin of suffering, samudaya. This states that all suffering comes from desire, tanha. The third truth is cessation of suffering, nirodha, and it says that it is possible to stop suffering and achieve enlightenment. The fourth truth, path to the cessation of suffering, magga, is about the middle way, which are the steps to achieve enlightenment. Buddhists believe in a wheel of rebirth, where souls are born again into different bodies, depending on how they conduct themselves in their previous lives. This is connected to karma, which refers to how a person's good or bad actions in the past or in their past lives can impact them in the future. There are 2 main groups of Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism. Mahayana Buddhism is common in Tibet, China, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and Mongolia. It emphasizes the role models of bodhisattvas, being that have achieved enlightenment but return to teach humans. Theravada Buddhism is common in Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and Burma, Myanmar. It emphasizes a monastic lifestyle and meditation as the way to enlightenment. Buddhism has been a controversial religion, the head of the Tibetan school of Buddhism and traditional leader of Tibet. The Dalai Lama fled from China-controlled Tibet in 1959 to India in fear of his life. Many Tibetan Buddhists actively resist Chinese control of the region. Recently, the current Dalai Lama, who is understood to be the 14th reincarnation of the first Dalai Lama, has raised questions over whether and where he will choose to reincarnate.
So good day, Mr. Ardinis. I am Decadent Jandel Mapula. So today, I'll be performing an short explanation about the philosophical foundation of Islam. So, what are the Islamic philosophy? Islamic philosophy is a branch of Islamic studies and is a long-standing attempt to create harmony between philosophy. So philosophy or means a reason and the religious teaching of Islam, which is faith. So the Islamic philosophy, as the name implies, refers the philosophical activity within the Islamic milieu. So the main source of the classical or early Islamic philosophy are the religion of Islam. It's especially the ideas derived and interpreted from the Quran. So it's the Greek philosophy which the early Muslim inherited as a result of conquest in Alexandria or in Syria, and John the Esfor came under Muslim rule. In pre-Islamic Iranian and Indian philosophy, many of the early philosophical debates centered around the reconciling religion of reason as exemplified by Greek philosophy. In early Islamic thought, two main currents may be distinguished, which is kalam is dealing mainly with the theological questions, and falsafa. Falsafa is founded on the interpretation of Aristotelian and Neoplatonic philosophy from the 9th century. So onward, owing na as a successor Greek philosophy of the introduced among the Persian and Arabs. So the expression of Islamic philosophy refers to the pre-modern philosophy, the rationalist tradition in classical Islamic civilization that have been influenced by ancient Greek. So the legacies in philosophy in general and the Pythagoreans, Platonists, and Aristotelian doctrines in particular. The beginning of the Islamic philosophy can be traced back to the foundationals, and in the first decades of the 9th century, the conceptual prolongations of its classical textuals or source and teachings are still influential in traditional schools. I taught in Iran, in addition to being revived in the adaptive affiliates, forms of variations or intellectual movements within the Arab world. In the countries such as Turkey, Malaysia, and Indonesia, the scholarship in modern mainstreams academy that focus on studying Islamic philosophy is mainly undertaken in the context of curricula and medieval philosophy. So the next question is the influence of the influence of Islam to the world. So the Islam had a profound global impact since it was founded in the 7th century during what's known as a golden age of Islam, which listed roughly between the mid 8th century until the 13th century. So the Muslims was the center of intellectual activity. Now, Baghdad serving as capital of philosophers, mathematicians, scientists, and along with astronomy and medicines. So, the example of global impact of the Islamics is the mathematician, although the numbers we are used to were developed in India and originally called as Hindu-Arabics or Hindu numerals, a symbolic system which is spread across the Middle East by mathematicians. So the next is a language, like mas ag language, Arabic has spread throughout the world by way of trade and conquest. So the Moors of North Africa, who invaded Spain in 1100s, so and were not completely explained until 1492. So Leif Adixtinck. So the next is the astronomy, which is other continuity that because of requirements of pacemaker during the daily prayers of Muslim needed in the accurate and determine their exact geographic locations as a Muslim. So next is medicine. So there's a known as Bika West. So a great contribution of philosophy, mathematics, and especially medicine. His Arabic book, The Canon of Medicine, was so influential that this was used by doctors and students to avoid spreading illness. That provides criteria and the metalloid as medicinal powers hospital. So that's it, sir. Thank you.
Taoism. The philosophical foundation of Taoism theology. Taoist theology can be defined as apophatic, given its philosophical emphasis of the formlessness and unknowable nature of the Tao, and the primacy of the way rather than anthropomorphic concepts of God. This is one of the core beliefs that nearly all the sects share. Taoism or Taoism refers to either a school of philosophical thought or to a religion. Both share ideas and concepts of Chinese origin and emphasize living in harmony with the Tao Chinese. The Tao, a book containing teaching attributed together with the later writings of Zongzi, are both widely considered the keystone works of Taoism. And Taoism, the Tao of the source of everything and the ultimate principle underlying reality. Taoism teaches about the various disciplines of achieving perfection through self-cultivation. This can be done through the use of Taoist techniques and by becoming one of the unplanned rhythms of all called the Way or Tao. Taoist ethics vary depending on the particular school, but in general tend to emphasize naturalness, simplicity, spontaneity with the three treasures, the compassion, frugality, and humility. The influence of the world Taoism. Taoism had influence on literature and the arts, but the biggest area of Taoist influence was in science. The Taoists focused on natural elements, observing how the natural works help to create Chinese medicine. Taoism is also called Taoism. It's a Chinese religion that developed a bit after Confucianism around 2,000 years ago. In contrast to Confucianism, Taoism is mainly concerned with spiritual elements of life, including the nature of the universe. The guiding principle of Taoism, roughly translated as the Way, which is a harmonious natural order that arises between humans and the world, and the Taoists should strive to achieve. In the Taoist structure of the universe, humans are meant to accept and yield to the Tao, and only do things that are natural and in keeping with the Tao. This is concept of Huawei, which translates as non-action, but really means to go with the true nature of the world and not strive too hard for desires. This puts Taoism in opposition of Confucianism in another way. It is not concerned about with humanic morality, government, and society, all of which Taoists see as inventions of human and not necessarily part of the Tao. At the same time, Taoists were interested in longevity, both of the human body and the soul, achieving spiritual immortality through becoming one of nature is an important part of Taoist religion.
So good day everyone, I'm the Cadet Rondina Junibin from Group 4. The topic is Judaism. So Judaism, monotheistic religion developed among the ancient Hebrews. Judaism is characterized by a belief in one transcendent God who revealed himself to Abraham, Moses, and the Hebrew prophets, and by a religious life in accordance with scriptures and rabbinic traditions. So what the philosophical foundation of Judaism? Judaism or Jewish philosophy. The term Jewish philosophy refers to various kinds of reflection engaged in by persons identified as Jews. At times, as in the Middle Age, this meant any methodical and disciplined thought pursued by Jews, whether on general philosophical subjects or on specifically Judaic themes. In other eras, as in modern times, concentration on the latter has been considered a decisive criterion, so that the philosophers who are Jewish but unconcerned with Judaism of the Jewish heritage and destiny in their thought are not ordinarily classified as Jewish philosophers. So, philosophy arose in Judaism under Greek influence. However, a kind of philosophical approach may be discerned in early Jewish religious works, apparently subject to little or no Greek influence. The books of Jobs and Ecclesiastes Hebrew were favorite works of medieval philosophers who took them as philosophical discussions not dependent on historical revelation. The book of Proverbs introduces an apparently theological context, the concept of wisdom, which was to have a primordial significance for Jewish thought and present it as the first and favorite of God's creations. So, this is Philo-Judaeus. So, Philo-Judaeus, the first systematic attempt to apply Greek philosophical concepts to Jewish doctrines, was made by Philo-Judaeus in the 1st century. Philo was influenced by Platonic and Stoic writings and probably also by certain post-biblical Jewish beliefs and speculations. He apparently had some knowledge to the oral law which was developing in his time, and he also knew of the Essenes whom he praised highly. So the influence to the world of Judaism. Judaism marked the beginning of the revolutionary idea that laid the groundwork for social reform. Humans have the ability and therefore the responsibility to stop injustice in the world. The Jews were the first to decide that it was their responsibility as the chosen people to fight against inequality in the world. So, how did Judaism influence other religions? So, the teachings of the Judaism have had a great impact on the world. The principle of monotheism influenced two other great religious traditions, Christianity and Islam. Judaism moral teachings and its idea of a weekly day of rest were also important influences. So why is Judaism an important religion? So Judaism is the world's oldest monotheistic religion. Dating back nearly 4,000 years, followers of Judaism believe in one God who revealed himself through ancient prophets. The history of Judaism is essential to understanding the Jewish faith, which has a rich heritage of law, culture, and tradition. So again, the Judaism so again the Judaism is the largest monotheistic religion developed the ancient Hebrews and characterized by a belief in one transcendent God who revealed himself to Abraham. So the Jewish people believes in one God. That's all. Thank you.
Good day. I am Decadec Enriquez Julius A. Caesar, and now I am going to report about the philosophical foundation of Confucianism and the influence to the world of Confucianism. So about the philosophical foundation of Confucianism, the main idea of Confucianism is the how importance of having a good moral character, and it can affect our society and culture, which can then affect the world and around the person through the idea of cosmic harmony. So it can affect people, how they treat other people, of having a good moral to our culture right now and society. If the emperor's moral perfection, his rule will be peaceful and benevolent. So as a person, we people are role to have a peaceful in life. So Confucius, so social philosophy was based on primarily on the principle of Ren, or loving others. So other people was based in their primarily on how they treat or loving other people, while exercising self-discipline. As a people, we discipline and respect what they treat to us. He believed that Ren could be put into an action using golden rule. So we believe that using the golden rule, it can tell us how we believe, actions, and what do you not wish for yourself. So for me, it will be good. It will be good for us if we believe and respect each other. So Confucius is relevant to our lives and today, because his sayings relate directly to us and how to live happier and more fulfilling lives. So our nation today is how we relate, how people fulfill their lives, and how they control their happier every day. And Confucius is takings can give us advice for how to live our lives and how to treat others. So it tells us how we can treat, or we can treat people with our personality. Confucius will be continued to impact our lives now and well into our future. So it can help and he can help us and give impact to how we live on to this world. So Confucius is the way of life propaganda. Confucius in the 6th 5th century BC, followed by the Chinese people for the 2 millennia. It remains the social code of Chinese and continues to influence other countries, particularly Japan, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. So it tells us how we follow the propaganda of the Chinese people, and how we influence the other country. So the philosophy behind the Confucianism is that the virtuous leader can recreate the well-ordered society which everyone follows vertical, ethical, and moral values. So Confucianism was built on an ancient religious foundation to establish moral values that have had a significant impact on Chinese society and culture. The philosophy means it can create a leader can create a society of how we give and follow the ethical, moral, and values. So it can impact how we establish the values of Chinese society and culture. So that's all. Thank you.
Good day, sir. I am Lauronal Alan J, and I am here to report the philosophical foundation of Christianity. So, philosophical foundation of Christianity. So, it relates the knowledge systematically. Then, it strives for coherence, the formulation of a worldview. Then, its method is to consult information from the total experience. So the biblical base. So the primary source for all learning is the Bible. So must be the vital part of the content of the curriculum and integrated with all subject matter. Then the purpose of Christian philosophy of education. So it is to develop biblical character in the lives of the students. So students must develop the biblical characters, so to gain more knowledge about the Christian life, then to secure for students the appropriate wealth of knowledge of Christ. So as I said earlier, to gain more knowledge about the Christian life. Then curriculum, so should be lively and appropriate to the needs of the learner as well as the needs of the community as a whole. Then must be academically sound and based upon truth, not on prejudice or biased points of view. So attain mastery of the subject within the context of biblical worldview. So why to teach Christianity? So it's to love the Lord God with all their hearts. So this is the most important part of our lives of being a Christian. We must love the Lord God with all our hearts because He gives the lives we didn't expect. So to become an effective believer, so we must believe in Him, God, who created us. And disciple students to develop Christian lifestyle characteristics, then help the students to articulate the hope that lies within him or her. So what to teach? So the very important is the virtue or moral maturity, then the knowledge of intellectual maturity, then self-control or physical maturity. So this is important, self-control or physical maturity. Then fortitude or emotional maturity, then the piety or spiritual maturity, then lastly the kindness or social maturity. So how to teach? So all procedures and process must be based on a definite theory of knowledge. So the implications of the teaching learning process. So process of guided learning where the teacher and the Holy Spirit combine efforts to help the learner to spiritually grow and mature to more and more conform to the image of Christ. So seeks to develop the learner a worldview, a perspective that enables him to understand, appreciate, and live a Christian life in the world in which God has placed him. So who is the responsible of the education of an individual? So according to Deuteronomy 6 to 6, 7, the parents are the primary educators of the students. The people in Bible times recognize the value of placing students under instructors. So who is responsible? So today's parents should see the church as being a coop in religious education of their children. So the role of the teacher. So the role of the teacher is a model of a Christian lifestyle. The teacher is an instructor of truth, and the teacher is one who guides, facilitates, and shapes learning. So role of the learner. So the pupil's growth is determined not by what he hears, but by what he does about he hears. Focus on the learner. So a learner is a real person. Teachers do not teach lessons, they teach people. So train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22, 6. So that's all, sir.
Hello, I'm Decadet Eborda. Our next topic is about the influence of Christianity to the world. How Christianity influenced the world today. As Christianity advanced to the world, cultures and civilizations changed for the better. Recognizing every person is created in the image of God. Christians led the abolition of slavery in England and America. Christians built churches, schools, orphanages, homeless shelters, and soup kitchens. So the influence of Christianity includes social welfare, founding hospital, economics, as the Protestants of work ethic, natural law, which would later influence the creation of international law, politics, architecture, literature, and family life. How did Christianity influence society? Christianity has been intricately intertwined with the history and formation of Western society. Throughout its long history, the church has been a major source of social services like schooling and medical care, an inspiration for art, culture, and philosophy, and an influential player in politics and religion. So religious practice promotes the well-being of individuals, families, and the community. So when the community comes together to worship and praise God, it leads to a reduction in the incidence of domestic abuse, crime, substance abuse, and addiction. Also, religious practice can increase physical and mental health, longevity, and education attainment. Christianity and its impact has shaped and stripped, modified and divided, comforted and enlightened the world. Christianity has managed to delve into every aspect of human life. Christianity is an array of life, science, education, technology, and arts, and has created the environment of religious belief which managed to ingrain its ideals into a social, political, and educational belief. So the Christian faith has influenced the modern world in a remarkable ways. Some atheists and non-theistic scholars have acknowledged the depth that is owed to the biblical faith. For the fact that human rights, democracy, the equality before the law, and the many of the values of human and moral and civil rights, these are actually the overflow of the Christian faith being lived out in a society. Jürgen Habermas, a philosopher and sociologist, comments on how without the Christian faith and without Judaic ethic of justice and the Christian ethic of love, we would not have these moral structures. So these social structures within the West that affirm democracy and equality. Also, Jacques Derrida, an atheist philosopher, said that without the biblical understanding of the image of God, we would not have any such thing as crimes against humanity. That is the bestowal of the biblical faith being lived out in a society. So that's all about the influence of Christianity to the world. So I hope you guys learned something.